Hi guys, it's Mrs. Blake again, and today we're going to talk about mole conversions part 2, mole to particle conversions. The materials you need for this video are going to be a scientific calculator. If you don't have a calculator in front of you, you can always Google scientific calculator, and the one that pops up on the screen works perfectly for this type of problems. In the first video, we talked about the concept of what is a mole. And we said a mole was equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd pieces. It is very similar to a dozen, except for it's just worth a whole lot more pieces. Now, I can have a dozen donuts, I can have a dozen dogs, I can have a dozen chemistry teachers. Well, I can have a mole of a lot of things too. And that leads to some confusion in chemistry problems because they'll ask you for different things, but the math is all the same. So some of the common terms you're going to run into. If I'm talking about the number of pieces of carbon at the tip of your pencil, we're going to use the term atoms because pieces of an element, like carbon, are going to be referred to as an atom. If we're going to be talking about how many pieces of water are in your glass of water, well, we're going to probably use the term molecules because covalent or molecular compounds, pieces of that are referred to as molecules. And if we're going to talk about the number of pieces of NaCl in your salt shaker, we're probably going to use the word formula units because ionic compound pieces are referred to as formula units. If a dozen cats is 12, and a dozen donuts is 12, and a dozen chemistry teachers is 12, a mole of atoms is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. A mole of molecules is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. And a mole of formula units is still 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. So we've got to become a little bit more accustomed to some different terms, but they all mean the exact same thing. Now let's take a minute to talk about units, because if I don't talk about units, students will make up their own. So we have mole. And mole is spelled M-O-L-E, and the appropriate chemistry abbreviation for mole is going to be MOL. Doesn't save you a whole lot, but that's the appropriate abbreviation. Now, atoms, you're kind of stuck with atoms. Atoms, you kind of have to just write out the term atoms. But students will come up with their own shortcut for molecule. And what students will frequently come up with for molecule can lead to confusion because they will abbreviate it as MOL or MOLE. But that's where the confusion comes in. So my own abbreviation. What I allow students to abbreviate for molecule is an M and a C, and that way you're not going to get it confused with the mole or the molecule. No student I've ever met wants to be able to write out formula unit. There is not a given abbreviation for formula unit. So what do students do? Well, they'll take the F from formula and the U from unit. But if you look at that carefully in a different context, that might be offensive to some people. So for our purposes, I do not want you to abbreviate with an F and a U, but I am perfectly okay if you abbreviate with an F, UN, because if somebody looks at your unit as fun, nobody's going to run into any problems with that. So let's take a look at some chemistry problems then. And all chemistry problems look alike and can be treated very, very much alike. So we have how many copper atoms are in 5.6 moles of copper. And if I'm taking a look at a chemistry problem, the first thing I want to find is I want to find the number. But 5.6 really doesn't help me out because chemistry is a units thing. That 5.6 is going to be important that this is going to be 5.6 moles of copper. And that provides me with my starting place. So for every single problem that I have on this sheet, I can go down and I can find my number. Here's 6.57 moles. And that is going to be my starting place. And I can go down here and I can say 4.3 times 10 to the 23rd moles. Okay, that's a much different looking number, but nope, that's still going to be my starting number. And I'm going to use MC for molecules then. And then the last problem that I have on my sheet is going to be 4.3 times 10 to the 23rd formula units. And again, whatever number they give me is going to be my place to start. And I'm going to use the F and then the UN from units as my abbreviation. So when I take a look at a problem, any chemistry problem, find the number and find the unit, and that becomes your starting place. But that unit also helps me set up my problem, because for every problem, I want you to draw a line that becomes a fraction line. Now, that sounds scary, but no, it's not nearly as bad as what it seems, because the unit that I'm going to start with, in this case it's moles of copper, is going to go to the bottom so that it can cancel out. Because the whole idea behind this problem is I want to take this moles of copper and I want to turn it into atoms of copper. And if I'm going to try to turn it into atoms of copper, I need to get rid of the moles. Anything on the top and the bottom of a fraction is going to cancel itself out. So with every single problem I have here, I can draw a line and I can take this unit and I can put this unit down on the bottom so it can cancel out. Well, from there, I can take a look at the little conversion table I have up here. In this case, I'm going to be starting at moles. And from moles, what am I trying to get to? Well, in the first problem, I'm trying to get to atoms. And if I'm trying to get to atoms, atoms are particles. And if I'm trying to get from here to here, I'm going to use Avogadro's number. And what does it get me to? Well, it's going to get me to atoms. So atoms is going to go on the top. And I have a conversion factor because I know that in 1 mole of anything, just like in 1 dozen of anything, there are going to be 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd pieces. And in this case, those pieces or particles that I'm going to be talking about are going to be atoms of copper. So I've got a 1, and the 1 goes in front of my mole here. So in 1 mole, and I'm going to put this 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd on top. And what that allows me to be able to do is to get rid of moles. And now the unit that I have remaining is going to be my atoms of copper. And if I'm at atoms of copper, that's what I'm looking for, I need to be able to calculate this out. Now, when I take a look at a problem like this, anything on top of the line is going to be multiplied by. Anything on the bottom of the line is going to be divided by. So that when I'm going to go put this into my calculator, I am going to take 5.6. I'm going to take times this 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. And I am going to take it divided by the 1. And I can hit equals and my calculator will spit out the answer. But let's take a minute and see how this looks in the calculator. So here's my Google calculator. And in my Google calculator, there is a button that we are going to use called the EXP button. And I am going to take this 5.6, I'm going to hit times, and I'm going to hit 6.02. But here's where my button comes in. I'm going to hit EXP, and that is going to replace the times and the 10 and any caret that you might use. If you use times 10 and a caret key, you will find yourself making calculator errors and coming out with some really, really strange numbers that aren't correct for mole conversions. So I'm going to use this 6.02. I'm going to hit this button instead, and I'm not going to hit times or 10 or caret. I'm just going to put in the power at the end of the scientific notation, the 23. And then I am going to divide by the 1 and hit equals. And the number that comes out is a little bit strange, but this E plus 24 just means times 10 to the 24th. So when I switch back over to this page, I am going to take 5.6. I'm going to take it times. I'm going to take 6.02. Now on my scientific calculator, I have to hit a second key, and I have to hit, my button is, instead of EE, it's going to be EXP, or sorry, instead of EXP, it's going to be EE. Either button works exactly the same way, it just depends on your brand of calculator. And then I'm going to put in my power. I'm going to divide by 1, and I'm going to hit equals, and my calculator is going to spit out a number. Now my calculator spit out a lot of decimal places, and you don't need all those decimal places. I think 2 decimal places is a pretty good number for most of the problems that you calculate out. So my calculator is going to spit out 3.37. It's going to say E, or times 10 to the 24th, and this is going to be atoms of copper. So I want you to pause the video for a second. I want you to try the second problem and see how you do. Okay, pause the video again and check your answer. The calculator buttons that you need to push are going to be on the right side of the page. So how did you do? So these problems help us to go from moles to particles, but the next set of problems we're going to take a look at are going to go from particles back to moles. But if you're following the setup to the problem the same way we've been doing, these problems set themselves up for you. So when I take a look at any problem, the number in the problem tells me the direction to go, and I can always take this unit, in this case it's molecules, and put it at the bottom so it cancels out. In this case, I've got formula units, and I can take that formula unit, it always goes to the bottom, so I can get rid of it. In both of these problems, I'm going to be taking particles and turning them into moles. So what do I need to put on top? Well, this is going to be moles. And I still have 1 mole is going to be equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. Except, in this case, the mole is on top, so the 1 goes on top, and the 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd goes on the bottom. Now, units still cancel, molecules will still cancel molecules, but this time the unit that's left is moles. And since my problem says how many moles of nitrogen, well, that's what I'm looking for, and that's what I need to do. Now, same math problem. I'm still going to take times, and I'm still going to take divided by. So, except in this problem, I am going to take 4.3. I need to use my EE or my EXP button twice this time. It's going to be 23. I'm going to take this times 1 this time, and now I'm going to divide by 6.02. And I'm going to use the same button, that EXP, and I'm going to say 23 before I hit my equals, and I should come out with the answer. So my calculator is going to come up with 0.71, and this is going to be moles. Now it's your turn. I want you to pause the video and try the next problem, and come back when you're done. All right, pause the video for a second and check your answers. The calculator buttons are going to be found on the right side for what buttons you need to push into your calculator. So how did you do? These problems take practice, and you need to try some problems on your own to see how you do. Please remember that these problems are unit problems, and as long as I take the number plus the unit and put that starting unit on the bottom, I will be set up to do the problems to end up with the right answers. Have a great day, guys.